Ethan, stay after class. That was the moment my brain fully woke up, which was pretty inconvenient, considering the damage was already done. My cheek was pressed against my notebook, my pen had rolled halfway across the desk, and about 20 people were staring at me like I had just committed a crime in the middle of modern American literature. I blinked hard, trying to understand where I was. The projector was still on. My laptop screen had gone black. Someone behind me coughed like they were trying not to laugh. And at the front of the room, Professor Nathan Cole stood with one hand resting on the edge of the podium, looking directly at me. Not angry. That would have been easier. Angry, I could deal with. Angry meant a warning, maybe a lecture, maybe an email with the words academic responsibility in it. But he wasn't angry. He looked concerned, which somehow made my stomach drop even harder. Sorry, I muttered, sitting up way too fast. My neck cracked. Great. Perfect. Very cool. A couple people snickered. I grabbed my pen like that would make me look less pathetic. Professor Cole didn't call attention to it. He just looked back at the class and continued like nothing had happened. That almost made it worse, because now I had to sit there for the last 12 minutes pretending I wasn't dying inside while he talked about emotional restraint in post-war fiction. Emotional restraint. Honestly, the universe had jokes. I tried to focus on the lecture, but my pulse was still beating in my ears. Every time he moved across the front of the room, my eyes followed before I could stop them. Dark sweater, rolled sleeves, calm voice. The kind of voice that made people listen without him ever needing to raise it. I had noticed that on the first day of class. I had also noticed his hands, his stupidly neat handwriting, and the way he remembered every student's name by week 2. Not that it meant anything. It was his job. He was a professor. I was just tired. That was all. I had closed the coffee shop at 1 in the morning, biked home in cold air that felt like it was cutting through my hoodie, then stayed up finishing a response paper I should have started 3 days earlier. So yeah, maybe I nodded off. Normal people got tired. Normal people did not develop a quiet, inconvenient crush on their literature professor and then fall asleep directly in front of him. When class finally ended, everyone started packing up around me. Zippers, chair scraping, low voices. I moved slowly, hoping maybe he had forgotten. Stupid hope. Ethan. His voice cut through the room, not loud, but clear enough to stop me with one strap of my backpack halfway over my shoulder. I looked up. Professor Cole was stacking papers on his desk. A minute. Mason, the guy who sat next to me, gave me a look like I was about to be executed. Good luck, he whispered. I wanted to throw my notebook at him. Instead, I stood there while the room emptied, one person at a time, until the door clicked shut behind the last student. Suddenly the classroom felt too quiet, too big, too much like there was nowhere to hide. Professor Cole didn't speak right away. He finished lining up the papers, then looked at me. Really looked. My chest tightened. I'm sorry, I blurted. That was completely unprofessional. I mean, not unprofessional. I'm not a professional, but disrespectful. It was disrespectful. It won't happen again. His mouth twitched slightly, like he almost smiled but decided not to. Ethan. Yeah. When was the last time you actually slept? I froze. Of all the things he could have said, that wasn't one I had prepared for. My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. I'm fine. He leaned back against the desk, arms loosely crossed. Not intimidating. Somehow worse. That wasn't my question. The room went still around us. I looked down at my shoes because looking at him was becoming a problem. A few hours. How many is a few? I gave a weak laugh. Enough to function, apparently not enough to stay awake during your class. This time he did smile. Barely. It disappeared almost right away, but I saw it, and my stupid heart reacted like he had handed me something fragile. I'm not asking because I'm offended. His voice dropped softer. I'm asking because you looked like you were about to fall over before you even sat down. I didn't know what to do with that. Most people didn't notice things like that about me. Or maybe they did, and just didn't say anything. Professor Cole reached for a folder, pulled out a printed copy of the lecture notes, and held it toward me. Here, so you don't have to pretend you caught everything. I stepped closer and took it. Our fingers brushed. Just for a second. Nothing. It meant nothing. But neither of us moved right away. His eyes flicked down to our hands, then back to my face. My throat went dry. I pulled the notes to my chest like an idiot. Thanks. Go home, Ethan. He glanced at my bag, then at me again. And eat something before your next shift. I should have asked how he knew I had work. I should have made a joke. I should have left like a normal person. Instead, I just stood there, feeling seen in a way that made me want to run and stay at the exact same time. I reached the door before he spoke again. One more thing. I turned. Professor Cole was watching me with that same unreadable expression. Calm, careful, dangerous in a way he probably didn't even know. Come by my office tomorrow. My stomach flipped. Did I do something else wrong? No, a pause. I want to check on your paper. I nodded like that was normal, like my heart hadn't just started pounding again. Yeah, sure. His gaze held mine for 1 second too long. And Ethan? Yeah. Try not to fall asleep on the way there. I laughed because I had to, because otherwise I might have said something stupid. Then I walked out into the hallway with his notes in my hand, and his voice still stuck in my head. I told myself he was just being a good professor. That was all. The problem was, I didn't believe myself. By the next morning, I had convinced myself the whole thing was not a big deal. Professor Cole had noticed a tired student, handed over lecture notes, and asked him to come by during office hours. Normal. Professional. Boring, even. That was the story I kept repeating while I stood behind the counter at the coffee shop, burning my thumb on the espresso machine and pretending I had not checked the clock 6 times in 20 minutes. My shift ended at noon. His office hours started at 1. Plenty of time to act normal. Apparently, plenty of time to overthink myself into a headache. I changed my shirt in the employee bathroom, stared at my reflection under the awful fluorescent light, and immediately hated that I cared. It is about your paper, I muttered to myself. You are going to talk about thesis structure. Calm down. A woman washing her hands beside me gave me a look. Great. Now strangers knew I was losing it, too. By the time I reached campus, the sky had gone gray, and the wind kept pushing cold air under my jacket. I walked across the quad with my draft folded inside my notebook, my stomach doing that annoying tight thing it did whenever I knew I was about to see him. His office was on the 3rd floor of the English building, down a hallway that always smelled like old carpet and printer paper. The door was half open. I could hear him talking to someone inside, his voice low and patient. I almost turned around, not because I had a reason, just because suddenly this felt too real for a conversation about commas. Then the other student walked out, gave me a polite smile, and disappeared toward the stairs. Professor Cole looked up from his desk. Ethan. Just my name. Nothing else. Still, my chest tightened. Hey. I stepped inside and held up the draft like a shield. I brought the paper. His eyes flicked to it, then back to me. Good. Close the door, please. I paused for half a second. He noticed. Of course he did. It is loud in the hallway, he added, calm as ever. Unless you want the entire department hearing me complain about your paragraph transitions. That startled a laugh out of me. Are they that bad? I would not say bad. He took the pages when I handed them over. I would say ambitious in a way that makes my job harder. That sounds like professor code for bad. He leaned back in his chair, mouth curving slightly. It is professor code for sit down. So I did. Across from him. Too close and not close at all. His office was smaller than I remembered from the hallway. Books stacked everywhere. A chipped navy mug near his laptop. One window with rain starting to spot the glass. He read silently for a few minutes, pen moving across the margins. I tried not to watch his hands. Failed. Tried again. Failed worse. You are doing something interesting here. He tapped the second page with the pen. You get close to saying what the essay is really about. Then you step back. I swallowed. Maybe I just like being vague. No, his gaze lifted. You are not vague. You are careful. The word landed harder than it should have. Careful. Like he had found the label I had spent years avoiding. I looked down at my knee bouncing under the chair and forced it still. That is not always a bad thing. No, it is not. His voice softened. But sometimes it keeps the best part of the writing locked outside the door. For a second, neither of us spoke. The rain tapped lightly against the window. Somewhere down the hall, a printer jammed, and someone cursed under their breath. I should have joked. I should have said something about not having a best part. Instead, I looked at him, and he was already looking at me. Not at the draft. Not at the pen. Me. Are we still talking about my paper? I meant it to sound funny. It came out too quiet. Professor Cole held my eyes for one beat too long. Then he glanced back down, like he had decided to be careful, too. Mostly. My pulse jumped. Mostly. That word was going to ruin my entire week. He cleared his throat and turned a page. You also missed yesterday's closing discussion, obviously. Yeah. Sleeping through it made participation tricky. I noticed. Hard not to. That almost smile came back. You looked peaceful, at least. Heat climbed up my neck. Please do not say that. Why? Because it makes it worse. Falling asleep in my class. His eyes lifted again. Or being caught. I stared at him. My brain went completely blank for one full second. Both, I managed. Definitely both. He did smile then, small and real, and I hated how much I wanted to earn it again. When the meeting ended, he handed my draft back with notes in the margins. A yellow sticky note was attached to the front. 3 books he thought might help. Under that, in smaller writing, eat before work. I looked at it, then at him. Do you write that on everyone's papers? Only the ones who look personally offended by breakfast. I laughed, but my throat felt tight. I eat. Coffee does not count. That is a hurtful accusation. It is an accurate one. I stood, tucking the draft into my notebook before I could do something embarrassing like stare at his handwriting too long. At the door, my hand was already on the knob when his voice stopped me again. Ethan. I turned. Professor Cole was watching me with that same careful expression from yesterday, the one that made me feel like he could see all the things I was trying to hide and was polite enough not to name them. You do not have to prove you are fine every time someone asks. My fingers tightened around the doorknob. I wanted to laugh it off. I really did. But nothing came out. He looked away first, just barely. Bring the next draft Thursday. I nodded, because my voice had apparently quit. Yeah, Thursday. I walked out with my paper pressed against my chest, and the sticky note burning in my pocket like it meant something. It did not. It was just a reminder. Just a professor being decent. Just office hours. That was what I told myself all the way down the stairs. But by the time I reached the first floor, I had unfolded the note again, and I was smiling like an idiot. By Thursday, I had read Professor Cole's sticky note so many times the corners started curling. That was embarrassing. Worse, I had actually listened to it. I ate breakfast before class. A real one. Toast, eggs, a banana I bought from the campus market and hated every second of because it felt like obeying him. I told myself it was not about him. I was simply making healthier choices. Mature. Responsible. Completely unrelated to the fact that Nathan Cole had written 3 words on a sticky note and somehow rearranged my entire morning. Class was normal at first. Too normal. He lectured about unreliable narrators, which felt personally offensive because I had become one in my own head. I sat 2 rows from the back, took notes, kept my eyes on my laptop, and refused to look at him for too long. That worked for about 9 minutes. Then he walked past my row while talking, paused beside my desk just long enough to place a printed article next to my notebook, and kept going without breaking his sentence. No explanation. No eye contact. Just the article. I stared at it. At the top, in his neat handwriting, he had written, "This might help with your revision." Under that, smaller, "Good breakfast?" My stomach flipped so hard I almost missed the next line of the lecture. I looked up before I could stop myself. He was already at the front of the room again, facing the board, like he had not just handed me a private little landmine in the middle of class. I pressed my lips together and wrote 1 word on the edge of my notes. Yes. Then immediately regretted it, because what was I doing? Passing notes with my professor? Was I 12? After class, I tried to leave quickly. I really did. But Mason saw the article before I could shove it into my bag. Extra reading? He leaned over my shoulder with a grin that was already annoying. Wow, you are becoming the favorite. My chest tightened. It is for my paper. Sure, it is literally for my paper. Mason held up both hands, laughing. Relax, man. I am just saying. Cole does not write cute little notes on my stuff. My body went still. It is not cute. I did not say romantic. I said cute. You are heavily implying. Am I? Mason's grin widened. Interesting that your brain went there. I gave him a look that should have ended the conversation. It did not. You get weird around him, he added, softer this time, like he was not fully joking anymore. I do not. You do. He nodded toward the front of the room. And for the record, he gets weird around you, too. I laughed because that was the only safe reaction. That is insane. Maybe. Mason slung his bag over his shoulder. Or maybe you are both just really passionate about paragraph structure. He walked away before I could answer, leaving me with a warm face and a cold feeling in my stomach. Because jokes were easy to dismiss when they stayed jokes. But Mason had noticed. That meant there was something to notice. I stood there too long, pretending to pack my laptop while the room emptied. When I finally looked up, Professor Cole was watching me from his desk. Not openly, not in a way anyone could accuse him of, but his gaze was there, steady and quiet, like he had heard enough to understand something had shifted. Ethan, my pulse jumped. Yeah. He glanced toward the hallway, where students were still moving past the open door. Then back to me. Do you have 10 minutes? I should have said no. I had work later. I had reading to do. I had every reason to leave before Mason's stupid comment grew legs and started running through my head. Instead, I nodded. Sure. He closed his laptop, gathered a few papers, and walked toward the door. Not here. The classroom gets booked after this. Not here. 2 harmless words. My brain treated them like a warning siren. I followed him down the hall to a smaller seminar room near the faculty offices. It was empty, with one long table, a whiteboard, and blinds half closed against the gray afternoon. He stepped inside first and left the door open a few inches. I noticed that. I noticed that he noticed me noticing. Boundaries. Careful. Professional. Still, the room felt too quiet. He set his papers on the table and leaned against the edge instead of sitting behind it. Mason made you uncomfortable. My mouth opened, then closed. You heard that. Enough. His expression tightened slightly. I am sorry. That caught me off guard. You did not do anything. I gave him something to notice. The honesty of that hit me harder than it should have. I looked down at the article in my hand. It is just extra reading. It is. A pause. And I should have given it to you after class. I forced a small laugh. So now we are having a meeting about article delivery? His mouth twitched, but he did not fully smile. Partly. What is the other part? For a second, he did not answer. He looked at me in that careful way again, the one that made the air feel thinner. Then he reached toward the table and tapped the article with 2 fingers. The other part is that your work is good, Ethan, and I need you to know that any attention I give it is because you earned it. I nodded too quickly. Right? Of course. But my heart kicked once. He looked away, jaw tightening like he was choosing every word before letting it out. I also know I have been paying attention to more than the work. The room went completely silent. I forgot how to breathe for a second. He did not move closer. He did not touch me. He just stood there, hands resting on the table, looking like he regretted the sentence and meant every word of it. Professor Cole, Nathan, he corrected softly, then seemed to catch himself. His eyes closed for half a second. Not in class. Sorry, that should have made things less confusing. It made them worse. Because now I knew what his name sounded like when it almost slipped out of a different version of us. I tightened my grip on the article. I should probably go. He nodded immediately. Too fast. Like he had been expecting me to run. Yes, that is probably smart. I moved toward the door, but just as I reached it, his voice stopped me again. Quieter this time. Ethan. I turned, even though I knew I should not. His eyes held mine from across the room. For what it is worth, I am trying very hard not to make this unfair for you. My chest hurt in a way I could not explain. Because that was not a confession. Not exactly. But it was not nothing, either. And that was the problem. I walked out with the article folded in my hand, Mason's words in my head, and one terrible truth finally, sitting where I could not ignore it anymore. I was not imagining this. I was just not supposed to want it. Friday was the first day I tried to avoid him on purpose. I picked a seat near the back corner, kept my hood up even though the classroom was warm, and stared at my laptop like it had personally saved my life. It was a terrible plan. Professor Cole did not call on me. He did not look at me for too long. He did exactly what he was supposed to do, which somehow made me feel worse. By the end of class, my notes were mostly half sentences and one accidental line that just said Nathan. I deleted it so fast my laptop almost slid off the desk. When everyone started packing up, I moved with military speed. Notebook shut. Bag zipped. Eyes down. Escape route clear. Then my phone slipped from the side pocket of my backpack and hit the floor under the row in front of me. Perfect, I muttered. I crouched to grab it at the same time someone else stepped closer. His shoes stopped beside my hand. Brown leather. Too familiar now. I looked up slowly. Professor Cole was holding my phone. Trying to make a quiet exit? My face went hot. Trying to make a normal exit. The phone disagreed. His mouth curved, but his eyes stayed careful. You forgot this too. He held out a folded sheet from my last draft. I had left it on the desk. Of course I had. Of course my brain had chosen today to become useless. I reached for it. He did not let go right away. Not enough to be obvious. just enough that the paper stayed between us for one strange second. My fingers touched his. The room had not fully emptied yet. 2 students were still near the door talking about weekend plans. Mason was somewhere behind me, probably noticing everything because apparently that was his hobby now. I should have pulled away. He should have let go. Neither of us did. Ethan. His voice was low enough that only I could hear it. My chest tightened. Yeah. His thumb shifted slightly against the edge of the paper, almost brushing mine. Almost. That stupid almost did more damage than an actual touch. Are you avoiding me because of what I said yesterday? I let out a small laugh that sounded nothing like a laugh. This feels like a trap question. It is not. You are my professor. Every question feels like a trap question. That got the almost smile again, but it faded quickly. He looked toward the door, then back at me. The 2 students finally left. Mason lingered for one extra second, eyes flicking between us, before lifting his eyebrows at me and walking out. The door clicked shut. Too loud. Suddenly, we were alone again. I tugged lightly on the paper. He released it immediately, like he had just realized he was still holding on. Sorry. It is fine. It was not fine. My hand felt too aware of itself. I shoved the page into my bag and stepped back. He stayed where he was, one hand resting on the desk beside him. Yesterday was unfair of me. I shook my head. You were being honest. Honest can still be unfair. There it was again. That carefulness. That thing in him constantly measuring distance, tone, timing. It should have made me feel safer. It did mostly. But it also made me want to ask what would happen if he stopped measuring for 1 second. I hated myself for wondering. I can handle it, I said. I know. His eyes held mine. That is not the issue. The air changed. Not dramatically. No music. No big movie moment. Just a quiet classroom. Late afternoon light through cheap blinds, and both of us standing too still. Then what is the issue? I should not have asked. I knew it as soon as the words left my mouth. Professor Cole looked away first, jaw tight. He picked up a marker from the desk, set it down, then picked it up again like his hands needed something safe to do. The issue is that I keep wanting to ask questions I do not have the right to ask. My pulse moved into my throat. Like what? His eyes came back to mine slowly. For a second, he looked less like Professor Cole and more like Nathan. Tired. Human. Trying hard. Like whether you ate today. I breathed out, almost laughing from the tension. That is not exactly scandalous. No, he took one small step closer, then stopped himself. Like whether you are sleeping. Still not scandalous. Like whether you have someone making sure you get home safe after closing. That one hit different. My fingers tightened around my backpack strap. I ride my bike. It is 10 minutes. At 1 in the morning. I have done it 100 times. That does not make me like it. The words came out too fast. He seemed to hear it at the same time I did. The room went quiet. My stomach dropped, but not in a bad way. In a dangerous way. I looked at him. You do not like it? He inhaled slowly through his nose, eyes lowering for half a second. Ethan. No, I am serious. My voice was still soft, but it shook a little. Is that still Professor Concern? He did not answer. Not right away. And that silence was the loudest thing that had happened between us yet. He was close enough now that I could see the faint crease between his eyebrows, the way his hand flexed once at his side like he was physically stopping himself from reaching for something. For me. Maybe I imagined that part. Maybe I did not. Ask me to leave? I whispered. I did not know where that came from. His eyes sharpened. What? If I should leave, ask me to leave. His throat moved when he swallowed. The space between us felt impossibly small, even though we were still a few feet apart. You should leave. The words were correct. Responsible. Professional. But his voice was not. His voice sounded like it cost him something. I nodded once, pretending that did not hurt. Right. I turned toward the door, heart pounding so hard I could barely hear my own steps. My hand touched the doorknob before he spoke again. Ethan. I closed my eyes for half a second, then looked back. Nathan stood in the middle of the classroom with one hand pressed against the desk, like he needed it to stay there. Not because I want you to. That was all. 6 words. Not a confession. Not a promise. Not enough to fix anything. But enough to make my chest ache all the way down the hallway. I told myself I was doing the right thing by leaving. The problem was, for the first time, I knew he wanted me to stay. The worst part about almost being told the truth was that regular life kept happening afterward. I still had to work. I still had to answer customer questions about oat milk like my chest had not been cracked open in a classroom 30 minutes earlier. I still had to smile at strangers while my brain replayed Nathan's voice over and over. Not because I want you to. By Saturday morning, I had slept maybe 4 hours total and looked exactly like it. Mason noticed before I even sat down in the campus cafe. "Wow," he said, lowering his iced coffee. "You look emotionally sponsored by a thunderstorm." I dropped into the chair across from him. "Good morning to you, too." "Seriously, what happened?" "Nothing happened." "That is your guilty voice." "I do not have a guilty voice." Mason leaned back, eyes narrowing. "You absolutely do. It is the same voice you used when you said Cole's notes were just notes." My stomach tightened at his name. I reached for my coffee, buying time. "Can we not do this?" That made him quieter. Less teasing. More careful. "Ethan." I hated when people said my name like that now. "People are talking." My fingers stopped around the cup. "What?" Mason glanced toward the counter, then lowered his voice. "Not like a scandal thing. Just little stuff. You are always staying after. He gives you extra readings. You two have these weird, intense silences that nobody asked to witness." Heat crawled up my neck. "That is not fair." "I know." He looked genuinely sorry. "I am not saying it is true. I am saying people notice patterns." I stared down at the lid of my coffee. There was a tiny crack near the rim. For some reason, focusing on that felt easier than breathing. "He has not done anything wrong." "I did not say he did." Mason's voice softened. "But he is still your professor." The words landed exactly where I did not want them to. Because I knew. Of course I knew. That was the whole problem. "I am not stupid," I muttered. "I know." "Then stop looking at me like I am." "I am looking at you like I am worried." That shut me up. Mason rubbed the back of his neck and sighed. "Look, I like you. And honestly, Cole seems like a decent guy. Annoyingly decent. But decent guys can still make complicated choices." I wanted to defend Nathan. Immediately. Too fast. That alone scared me. So I said nothing. Mason watched me for a second, then nodded like my silence had answered enough. "Just be careful." I laughed once, small and bitter. "Everyone keeps saying that. Maybe because you are standing near a cliff and pretending it is a sidewalk." I left 10 minutes later with half my coffee untouched and Mason's warning sitting heavy in my chest. I told myself he was being dramatic. But by Monday, I could feel it. The glances. Nothing obvious. Just one girl looking over when Professor Cole handed back my paper. Two guys near the door going quiet when I walked past. Mason did not joke during class. That somehow made it worse. Nathan felt it, too. I could tell because he changed. Not enough for anyone else to call out. Just enough for me to notice. He did not pause beside my desk. Did not ask if I had eaten. Did not look at me when he made a point I knew connected to my paper. He was professional. Perfectly, painfully professional. And I hated that I missed the small things so quickly. After class, I waited for everyone else to leave before approaching his desk. Stupid, maybe. But I needed to know if the wall between us was real or just necessary. He was putting books into his bag when I stopped a few feet away. "Can we talk?" His hands paused for half a second. Then he looked toward the open door. "Not here." The same words as before, but different now. Colder. Safer. Right. I tried to smile. Failed. Because people might notice. His jaw tightened. Because they already have. My chest pulled tight. So he knew. Of course he knew. Nathan lowered his voice. "A colleague asked me this morning why one student was taking up so much of my office hours." I looked down. "I am sorry." "Do not." The word came sharp enough that I glanced up. His expression softened immediately, like he regretted the edge. "Do not apologize for needing help with your work." Is that all it is? The question slipped out before I could stop it. His eyes held mine, and for 1 second, I saw the answer before he buried it. It has to be. Quiet. Controlled. Devastating. I nodded like my throat did not hurt. "Okay. Ethan." "No, I get it." I took a step back, suddenly aware of the open door, the hallway, the entire campus pressing in around us. Boundaries matter. I heard that part. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or frustration. "You are angry." "I am embarrassed." My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated that more than anything. Because I thought. I do not know what I thought. He moved like he wanted to step closer, then stopped himself. That little stop said everything. You did not imagine it. My breathing caught. The hallway noise faded behind me. "Then why are you acting like I did?" Nathan looked away, one hand gripping the strap of his bag. When he looked back, His voice was lower. Because if people are already talking, I need to be the one who steps back. Not you. I wanted to be mad. It would have been easier. But there he was, choosing distance in a way that still felt like care, and that made it hurt worse. So what now? His face closed a little, not cold, just careful again. Now we finished the semester. I nodded slowly. Right. My paper. Your paper, he repeated, but his eyes did not leave mine. For a second, neither of us moved. Then someone laughed in the hallway, close enough to remind us where we were. Nathan looked toward the door. I stepped back first this time. I will send the next draft by email. His expression changed, barely. A tiny flinch he probably thought I missed. That would be best. I walked out before I could ask him to say something selfish. Before I could say something worse. Behind me, I heard him exhale, quiet and uneven, like he had been holding his breath the whole time. And that was the part that stayed with me. Not the warning. Not the rumors. Not even the distance. It was knowing he was pulling away because he cared, and still feeling like I was the one being left behind. For 2 weeks, everything became technically fine. That was the worst kind of fine. I went to class. Professor Cole taught like nothing had changed. I emailed my draft. He replied with clean, professional comments that had no sticky notes, no jokes, no little reminders to eat before work. Just margin notes and page numbers. Exactly what he was supposed to do. Exactly what I thought I wanted. By the second Thursday, I was so annoyed by how much I missed him that I started getting mad at myself. He was still in the same room. Still 3 rows away. Still saying things like narrative distance and emotional honesty, while I sat there pretending those words were not personally attacking me. After class, I packed up slowly because I hated myself, apparently. I did not plan to talk to him. I was done making things harder. But then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. For 1 second, my brain did something stupid. Then I opened it. The printer in the library ate your draft. I found page 7 in the hallway. You may want it back. I stared at the message. Then the next one came. This is Professor Cole. Nathan. Sorry. That was an odd way to identify myself. My chest did this ridiculous little kick. Across the room, he was still at his desk, not looking at me. Too carefully not looking at me. I typed, deleted, typed again. Page 7 was the only good page. His reply came fast. I disagree. Then, after a pause, it was page 6. I bit down on a smile and hated how quickly warmth moved through me. When I looked up, his eyes were already on mine. For a second, the room got quiet around the noise. Students talking, chairs scraping, someone laughing by the door. None of it felt close. He glanced toward the hallway, then back at his phone. Another message appeared. Do you have 5 minutes? Public place. Hallway bench. That should not have made my hands shake. It did. I waited until the room emptied, then walked out like I was not about to lose my mind over a hallway bench near a vending machine. He was already there, standing instead of sitting, one hand in his coat pocket, the missing page folded in the other. He looked tired. Not messy, not unprofessional. Just tired in a way I had not let myself notice before. Your fugitive page. He held it out. Thanks. I took it, careful not to touch his fingers this time. He noticed that, too. His face shifted just a little. Ethan, it is okay. I folded the page into my notebook. You do not have to do the whole careful speech again. His mouth pressed into a thin line. I probably do. Please do not. The words came out softer than I meant. A couple students passed us, laughing about weekend plans. Nathan stepped half a foot farther from me. That tiny movement hurt more than it should have. I looked down at the floor. See? You are doing it right now. He was quiet for a second. Doing what? Leaving before you leave. His eyes came back to me. Something in them loosened, like the sentence had hit him in a place he had been trying to protect. I gave a small, embarrassed laugh and shook my head. Forget it. That sounded dramatic. No, his voice was low. It sounded accurate. I stopped. He looked toward the end of the hall, checking for people, then back at me. Still careful. Still responsible. But there was a crack in it now. I have been trying to make things normal. Yeah. And I am doing a poor job. That almost made me smile. Honestly, terrible. A breath left him, close to a laugh. It faded fast. I thought distance would make this easier for you. It does not. I should not have said it that plainly. But I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of decoding every look like it was a midterm. Tired of acting like I had not felt him pulling away every single day. Nathan's hand tightened once around the strap of his bag. It has not made it easier for me either. My heart slowed down and sped up at the same time. What? He looked at me then. Really looked. Not as a professor correcting a paper. Not as someone trying to be polite. Just a man who was tired of lying badly. I did not want you to leave that day. The hallway seemed to tilt. I could hear the vending machine humming beside us. Some door closing far away. My own breathing, too shallow. In the classroom? He nodded once. When I told you that you should go, I forced myself to speak. You also said not because you wanted me to. I meant it. His voice barely moved above a whisper. I still mean it. I looked away because if I kept looking at him, I was going to forget every reason this was complicated. Then why are we acting like it is only me? The silence after that was not empty. It was full of everything neither of us could say in a hallway. Nathan stepped a little closer, then stopped before the distance became something someone could name. Because it cannot matter yet. Yet. That one word went straight through me. Yet. His eyes dropped for half a second, like he knew exactly what he had given away. Your final grade is not submitted. You are still in my class. I will not blur that line. I know, but I need you to understand something. His voice roughened slightly. The line is the only reason I am standing over here. My chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. He was close enough that I could see the tiredness under his eyes, the careful set of his mouth, the way he was holding himself still like wanting anything was dangerous. I nodded, because I trusted him more in that moment than I trusted myself. Okay. His expression softened. Okay. Yeah. I swallowed. We finished the semester. We finished the semester, he repeated. Then, quieter. And after that, if you still want to talk somewhere that is not a hallway, he did not finish. He did not have to. For the first time in weeks, I smiled without trying to hide it. Somewhere with better lighting than this. His eyes flicked up to the ugly ceiling panels, and a small smile broke through. That would be ideal. A door opened nearby, and we both stepped back at the same time. Too fast. Too obvious to ourselves, if no one else. Nathan looked down at the page in my notebook, then at me. Send me the revised draft by Monday. There it was. Professor Cole again. Safe. Proper. But his eyes were still Nathan's. I nodded. Sure. I made it halfway down the hall before my phone buzzed again. I stopped near the stairs and looked. For what it is worth, page 7 was good, too. Under it, a second message appeared. And no, Ethan. It was never only you. I stood there with my hand on the railing, heart pounding, trying not to smile like an idiot in the middle of the English building. For once, I did not tell myself it meant nothing. I could not. Not anymore. Monday should have felt easier after that. It did not. Knowing it was not only me made everything sharper. Every time Nathan looked in my direction during lecture, I felt it like a hand around my ribs. Every time he looked away too quickly, I reminded myself why. Final grade not submitted. Still in his class. Finished the semester. Simple rules. Clean rules. I liked rules until I was the one waiting on the other side of them. I turned in my revised draft by email like we agreed. No extra comments. No joke. No, page 7 was good. Just the attachment and a sentence that sounded like I had been assembled in a lab for polite students. Please find my revised draft attached. I hated it immediately. He replied 3 hours later. Received. Thank you, Ethan. That was all. Thank you, Ethan. I stared at the email behind the counter at work while the espresso machine screamed beside me. My coworker Jenna leaned over my shoulder. Bad news. I locked my phone so fast it almost slipped out of my hand. No. School stuff. She raised one eyebrow. You look like someone broke up with you using punctuation. That is weirdly specific. I am gifted. I shoved my phone into my apron. It is nothing. But the problem with nothing was that it kept feeling like something. For the next few days, Nathan was careful again. Not cold exactly. Just sealed up. In class, he stayed behind the podium more than usual. In emails, he sounded like a university handbook with a pulse. When Mason asked if I was okay, I told him I was tired. That part was true. By Thursday, I had started building an entire disaster in my head. Maybe Nathan regretted the hallway. Maybe the message had scared him after he sent it. Maybe he had woken up the next morning and remembered all the reasons I was a terrible idea. Maybe, yet had only meant never, but politely. After class, I waited for some sign. Anything. A glance. A pause. My name spoken in that lower voice that made my spine forget its job. Nothing. He dismissed everyone, gathered his papers, and answered a question from a girl named Priya about the final. Professional. Easy. Normal. I hated how jealous I felt of normal. I was almost at the door when I heard her laugh. Thanks, Professor Cole. Seriously, you are like the only reason I am passing this class. He smiled. Not his careful almost smile with me. A normal one. You are doing the work. I am just reading it. I kept walking, because apparently I was the kind of person who could get jealous over academic encouragement now. Outside, the hallway felt too bright. Mason caught up with me near the stairs. Hey, you good? Do not ask me that. He stopped beside me. Okay. Terrible sign. I rubbed both hands over my face. I think I made it up. Mason's expression changed. Made what up? I laughed once, sharp and quiet. The whole thing. Or not made it up, exactly. Maybe I just made it bigger than it was because I wanted it to be bigger. Mason did not joke this time. That made my stomach sink more. Did he say something? No. That is the point. I looked back toward the classroom door. He is acting like none of it happened. Maybe because he has to. Or because he wants to. The words came out smaller than I meant. Mason softened, and that was somehow worse than teasing. Ethan, I am fine. You are not. I will be. I walked away before he could say anything kind enough to break me. That night, I closed the coffee shop late. Rain had started around 11, the thin cold kind that made the sidewalk shine under the streetlights. My bike was locked behind the building, and I stood under the awning with my hood up, staring at the water dripping off the edge. My phone buzzed. For a second, my heart jumped so hard I hated myself. It was an email notification. From him. Your revision is much stronger. The ending still pulls back. Do not be afraid of the last honest sentence. I read it twice. Then a third time. My thumb hovered over reply. I should have written, thank you. I should have written nothing until morning. Instead, I typed, maybe the last honest sentence is usually a bad idea. I hit send before I could stop myself. The reply came 7 minutes later. 7 minutes I spent pacing under the awning like a complete idiot. Sometimes. Not always. I stared at the screen, rain ticking against the metal above me. My chest hurt. I was so tired of half sentences. So tired of careful. So tired of wanting someone who was very good at stepping back. I typed, are you regretting what you said? Then I deleted it. Then I typed it again. Sent. My stomach dropped immediately. No reply. 1 minute. 3. 8. My shift ended long ago, and I was still standing there in the cold like my entire life depended on a typing bubble. Nothing. Finally, I shoved the phone into my pocket and unlocked my bike with hands that felt clumsy and numb. Of course, that was the answer. Silence was an answer, too. I had just put on my helmet when headlights slowed near the curb. A dark sedan pulled up beside the alley, window lowering with a soft hum. Nathan leaned across the passenger seat, rain shadowing his face. My body forgot how to move. Ethan. His voice was tight, not calm at all. Do not bike home in this. I stared at him through the rain. What are you doing here? His fingers gripped the steering wheel, trying not to regret something else. The words hit me so hard I just stood there, rain soaking into my sleeves. He looked at the empty street, then back at me. I saw your message while I was grading. I did not want to answer that in an email. My throat felt dry despite the rain. So you drove here? A pause. His jaw flexed. Yes. That should have made things clearer. It did not. It made them terrifying. That is not very normal. His eyes held mine through the open window. No, I let out a shaky breath. Are you regretting it? Nathan looked away for half a second, like the honest answer cost him. When he looked back, his voice was low and rough around the edges. I am scared of it. My chest tightened. That is not the same thing. I know. Neither of us moved. Rain filled the space between us. Then a car passed, tires hissing through the street, and Nathan seemed to remember where we were. He sat back slightly. Let me drive you home. Nothing else. Just so I know you got there safe. I should have said no. Every careful part of me screamed it. But then I looked at him. At the worry he was not hiding well enough. At the way he had crossed the city just to not leave me alone with a bad answer. I unlocked my bike from the rack and swallowed. I need to put this in your trunk. His shoulders loosened like he had been holding his breath. Okay. We barely spoke while he helped load it. His hand brushed mine once near the trunk latch. Both of us froze. Just a second. Then he pulled back first. Of course he did. The drive to my apartment was 10 minutes. Maybe less. It felt like a whole semester. At my curb, I unbuckled slowly. You could have just emailed. Nathan stared out the windshield, rain sliding over the glass. No, I could not. I looked at him. He still was not looking at me. Why? His hands rested on the wheel, knuckles tight. Because I needed you to hear my voice when I told you I am not regretting it. The car went silent except for the ring. My heart was pounding so hard it felt embarrassing. Then what are we doing? He finally turned to me. His face looked tired, careful, and too honest to hide behind Professor Cole anymore. Trying not to ruin something before it is allowed to begin. I nodded, even though my throat hurt. Okay. My hand found the door handle. Before I opened it, he spoke again. Ethan. I looked back. Yeah. That last honest sentence. His mouth curved slightly, but his eyes stayed serious. Do not delete it. I stepped out into the rain with my chest aching and my head spinning, and for the first time, the distance between us did not feel like rejection. It felt like fear. His and mine. The final week of class arrived like a deadline nobody wanted to name. Everyone around me was stressed about grades, papers, finals, moving out, summer plans. Normal things. I was stressed because Nathan had driven me home in the rain, told me he was not regretting it, and then somehow we both had to walk into class 2 days later and pretend the word allowed had not been sitting between us like a lit match. I turned in my final paper on Wednesday morning. No email. No extra sentence. I printed it, stapled it, and placed it on his desk with everyone else's before class started. He looked at the stack, then at me. Just once. Quick. Careful. Enough to make my chest tighten. The lecture was short. Mostly review. He talked about endings, which felt rude. A good ending does not answer everything, he told the room, marker in hand. It only tells the truth the story has earned. I stared at my notebook. Mason, beside me, slowly turned his head and looked at me like, are you hearing this? I kicked his shoe under the desk. He smiled down at his notes. After class, people stayed around asking last-minute questions. I packed slowly, not because I had a plan, but because leaving felt wrong. Nathan answered everyone with patience. Calm voice. Steady hands. Professor Cole. The version of him that belonged to the room. When the last student walked out, I was still there, pretending to organize papers that were already organized. He looked at the open door, then at me. Ethan. My name sounded different in the empty room. I zipped my bag. I know. I should go. That is not what I was going to say. I stopped. He stood behind the desk with one hand resting on the stack of final papers. Mine was somewhere in there. Maybe on top. Maybe not. I hated that I wondered. Then say it. The words came out sharper than I meant. His eyebrows lifted slightly, but he did not look offended. If anything, he looked relieved. Like he had been waiting for me to stop being polite. Okay. He stepped around the desk, then stopped halfway, leaving space between us. Always space. I think we need to stop pretending this feels normal. My heart kicked once hard. You are the one who started pretending harder. I know. No defense. No explanation dressed up as wisdom. Just that. I looked down at the floor because his honesty made mine harder to avoid. It is confusing when you care and then disappear. His jaw tightened. I did not disappear. Nathan. His name came out before I could stop it. The room went quiet around it. His eyes changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. Like the name had crossed the room and touched him. I swallowed. You did. He looked away, exhaling through his nose. One hand went to the back of his neck, then dropped. I was trying to protect you. I know. And the class. I know. And myself, probably. That one made me look up. He gave a small, humorless smile. I am not as noble as I would like to sound. My fingers tightened around my backpack strap. What does that mean? He leaned back against the front of the desk, not close, but closer than before. It means I missed you. The words were simple. Too simple for how much they did to me. My throat tightened. You saw me twice a week. I saw the version of you that stopped looking at me. I did not know what to say to that. So I did the worst possible thing. I told the truth. Because looking at you made me feel stupid. His face softened. Ethan. No, let me say it. My voice shook, but I kept going because if I stopped, I would never start again. I know what this looks like. I know you are my professor. I know people talk. I know it is messy. But I am tired of acting like I made it all up just because the careful version is easier for everyone else. He did not move. Barely breathed. You did not make it up. My chest hurt. Then say what it is. That was it. The line. The stupid, terrifying line. Nathan looked at the door. Still open a few inches. He walked over and pushed it wider, not closed. Wider. Like he wanted the boundary visible. Like he needed us to stay in the real world. Then he turned back to me. It is inappropriate while you are in my class. I know. It is complicated because I have authority here. I know. And I have thought about that every day since you fell asleep in that chair. My breath caught. He looked at me, finally not hiding the ache in his face. But it is not one-sided. The room went still. No dramatic music. No rain this time. Just fluorescent lights, a half-erased whiteboard, and me standing there with my heart beating too hard. I am drawn to you, he continued, voice quiet. I worry about you. I look for you when you walk into the room. I read your drafts twice because I like the way your mind works, and then I tell myself that is the only reason. A short, almost embarrassed breath left him. It is not. I stared at him. You cannot just say that and stand 12 feet away. His mouth curved faintly. I absolutely can. That is the point. I laughed once, shaky and quiet, and wiped my palm against my jeans. I hate that you are responsible. No, you do not. I kind of do right now. This time, he smiled for real. Small. Tired. There and gone. The tension did not break, but it loosened enough for me to breathe. I took one step closer. Not much. Just enough to tell the truth with my body because my voice was nearly done. He noticed. Of course he did. His hand flexed against the edge of the desk. Ethan, I am not asking you to cross the line. Good. I am asking if there is something after it. His eyes held mine. Long enough that I felt the answer before he gave it. Grades are due Friday at 5. My stomach flipped. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I can give you today. I nodded slowly, trying not to smile and failing a little. Friday at 5. After that, if you still want to have coffee somewhere off campus. He stopped, like even finishing the sentence felt dangerous. I finished it for him. I do. His expression softened in a way that made me want to sit down. You do not have to decide right now. Nathan. I looked straight at him. I decided before I knew I was allowed to. The silence after that felt different. Not empty. Not scary. Full. He looked down for a second, and when he looked back up, there was something unguarded in his face that I had never seen in class. Then Friday. I nodded. Friday. I turned to leave before either of us ruined the only good decision we had made. At the door, I looked back. He was still standing by the desk, watching me like he wanted to memorize the distance and survive it for 2 more days. For what it is worth, I said, hand on the door frame. I did eat breakfast today. His laugh was quiet. Real. It followed me into the hallway and stayed there long after the door clicked behind me. For the first time, walking away did not feel like losing him. It felt like we were finally walking toward the same thing, just from opposite sides of the line. Friday at 5 felt fake until it happened. I was at work when the notification came through. Final grades had been posted. My hands went still around the milk pitcher, steam hissing too loud in front of me. I opened the portal with my thumb shaking like an idiot. Of course there were comments, too, because Nathan apparently could not let a grade exist without giving it emotional weight. Your final essay found the honest sentence. That was all. No signature. No extra note. Still, I had to set my phone face down and pretend I was not smiling at a counter full of strangers. At 6:30, my shift ended. I changed in the back, fixed my hair, messed it up again so it looked less like I had fixed it, and told myself at least 5 times that this was just coffee. Normal coffee. Adult coffee. Off-campus coffee. That last part made my chest tighten. He had picked a small place 3 blocks from the university, the kind with scratched wooden tables, old posters on the wall, and a barista who looked personally offended by happiness. Nathan was already there when I walked in. Not Professor Cole. Not really. He wore a dark jacket over a plain shirt. No tie, no stack of papers, no university badge clipped to his pocket. He looked up when the bell over the door rang, and for 1 second his face did something I had never seen in class. It opened, like he had been holding his breath for 2 days and finally remembered how air worked. Hi, I said, because apparently all my writing skills died at the worst possible time. His smile was small, nervous around the edges. Hi. I sat across from him. The table between us felt both helpful and insulting. For a minute, we talked about normal things because we were cowards. My shift, the bad weather, the fact that Mason had texted me 3 eye emojis and nothing else. Nathan laughed at that, quiet and real, looking down at his coffee like he was trying not to enjoy it too much. Then the silence came. Not awkward, just honest. He rested one hand near his cup, fingers loose, careful even now. Your grade was submitted at 4:58. I nodded, cutting it close. I checked it 3 times. My essay. The boundary. That hit harder than I expected. I looked at him across the little table, at the tiredness under his eyes, at the way he was still trying to do this right even after there was no classroom around us. You really were scared. Yes. No hesitation. Of hurting you. Of putting pressure on you. Of wanting something and calling it harmless because I wanted it. My throat tightened. I wrapped both hands around my cup. For what it is worth, I never felt pressured. His eyes lifted to mine. I needed to hear that. Good. I took a breath. And for what it is worth, I was scared too. Of me. No, I shook my head. Of being wrong. Of being the only one feeling everything. His expression softened so much it almost hurt to look at. You were not. 3 simple words. No dramatic confession. No big speech. Somehow better. My laugh came out shaky. I know that now. Good. You say that a lot. You make it easy. He looked immediately embarrassed after saying it, which was new and unfairly charming. I smiled into my coffee. That sounded almost like flirting. It was meant to. My eyes snapped up. He looked nervous, but he did not take it back. That was the first time I understood this was not going to be some grand movie moment. It was going to be him choosing not to retreat. Me choosing not to hide. Small steps. Honest ones. After coffee, we walked outside together. The air was cool, the sidewalk damp from earlier rain, campus lights glowing a few blocks away like a place we had both survived. We stopped at the corner where I would usually turn toward my apartment. Neither of us moved. So, I said, staring at the crosswalk sign like it had answers. Is this where we say something mature and careful? Nathan's shoulder brushed mine lightly. Probably. Do you want to? Not especially. I laughed, and he did too, and somehow that made my chest ache worse. Then his hand moved. Slow enough that I could step away. Careful enough that it still felt like him. His fingers touched mine, not grabbing, just asking. I looked down. Then I let my hand fit into his. He did not pull away. Neither did I. For a few seconds, we stood there on an ordinary sidewalk, holding hands like it was the simplest thing in the world, even though it had taken us a whole semester to get there. We go slow, he murmured. I nodded. Yeah. No hiding in classrooms. No grading my breakfast habits. His mouth curved. I make no promises. I bumped his shoulder with mine, and this time, neither of us stepped back. We crossed the street together when the light changed. No one clapped. No music played. Nothing magical happened. Just 2 men walking side by side, out from under all the things they had been afraid to say. And maybe that was why it stayed with me. Because love did not start for us with some perfect confession. It started with a bad nap, a quiet question, a sticky note, and 2 people trying very hard to do the right thing without losing each other. I used to think the dangerous part was wanting him before I was allowed to. I was wrong. The dangerous part was believing I had to pretend it meant nothing. And the best part was the first time he held my hand like he had finally stopped pretending to.